Before we get into the podcast, I want to share with you an upcoming event that we have that I think you're going to want to join us for because it's going to bring you up to date on what's going on in pickleball in 2025. Specifically, the event is called the State of Play, where the Better Pickleball coaching team, headed by CJ and myself, will be sharing with you the latest trends that are going on in our sport, strategically with shots, rules, and otherwise. It's a free event, but you do need a ticket because of the limited space in the room. It's also a live event, so you get to ask us some questions. We're going to send you a survey beforehand where you can share with us what's going on and what you're thinking about so that we can answer it during the event. It's just going to be a lot of fun and interactive live event on a Saturday afternoon where we can talk about pickleball. I'll put a link down in the show notes. You can also just go to betterpickleball.com if that's easier for you to get your ticket. And I hope you can join us and look forward to seeing you on February 22nd. Now let's dive into the podcast. Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. I am your host, Tony Roy. It's a pleasure to be with you. This is a special episode of the podcast. In this special episode, I got to interview Ty Woody. Ty Woody is a sports performance coach. He works with pro as well as amateur pickleball players in terms of their body, getting their bodies ready to play the best possible pickleball, dealing with injury prevention and things like that. So we wanted to chat with Ty about the body and about ways that we can get our bodies in the best position to play our best pickleball. And that's part of the athletic pillar that we talk about at Better Pickleball. You know, the mechanical pillar, the strategic pillar, and the athletic pillar. The body and mind connection is so important to how well we perform. And Ty is going to share with us some thoughts on that topic. We got the opportunity to meet Ty at our intensive camp in Arizona, and all the players there had nothing but great things to say about Ty. So we wanted to bring to you some of the ideas and concepts from Ty to help you play your best pickleball. Let's jump into the podcast. Ty, good to see you. How you doing today? How's everything your way?
Doing well. How are you, Tony? Living the dream over here in Arizona. Nice, cool 70-degree weather.
I already mentioned this to you, but I love your background there. The very colorful, very festive. So that's an awesome background. Much better than my still under construction, figuring stuff out background here. So
yeah, you got to enjoy it. You got to enjoy it.
Yeah. You got to enjoy the moment, enjoy the process, right? So, Ty, I've already given an introduction about you, so the folks out there know what to expect in this conversation. But let's dive right into it. I know that you're doing a lot of work now with pickleball players have become a really important part of your process of your work, and particular interest to listeners would be. Walk us through a little bit about that, your experience, what you've seen in terms of maybe areas that pickleball players, just as a general rule, could use some help, suffering injuries, wherever you want to take it. But, something that's specific to pickleball players would be really helpful to the folks listening.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I can tell you, so with my background a little bit, I've worked with a whole wide range of sports and a whole wide range of athletes, younger to, 60 plus crowd. And what I think I've noticed a lot with pickleball players is they tend to think they're the exception to everything. So in every other sport, we warm up, right? We warm up before we practice. We warm up before we play. We are in the weight room strength training. We are taking our recovery days when we need to. Like they're planned. They're on purpose. And so a lot of time with pickleball players is for some reason we think, well, I don't need to do any of that, right? It's like, we're just going to go do this. And,
right.
And I think it's really important to remember for players is this is a sport. I don't care what anybody says or does, whatever. Like pickleball is a sport. You're doing the same athletic movements other sports are doing. And so you need to prepare your body for that, right? And so oftentimes I would say is you have to give it the respect that it deserves, so the importance of warming up before you go play. That's probably, if there is one thing that could change your game, that could change how your body feels, that could help you get the leg up on your opponent, take 10 to 15 minutes before you go play and warm up, right? It's low-hanging fruit and it's super easy to do and it's free, right? If I could offer you something that would, it's legal, it's, it doesn't cost you any money and It will increase your alertness, reduce your chance of getting injured and all those things that you're looking for, would you take it? Like, that's a warm up. So there is something I could tell players right out the get-go. We have to change this culture a little bit of oh, it's weird to warm up. It's weird to go do this before I go play. It's weird to do these things. We just want to go dink and hit the ball right away.
Right.
And so we have to kind of change that culture shift a little bit and lead from the front and be like, no, like we're taking care of our bodies. At the end of the day, we want to play the sport that we enjoy. So it's just one of those things. You got to do it. I don't know. There's no other way around it. You got to do it.
What's interesting is, it's. I think we should change the dink warm up idea to that's not really a warm up. That's just social interaction, and it's nothing wrong with it, right? You go out there, you dink a little bit. Hey, how you doing, Ty? What's going on? What's going on with your life? You tell me. We're not warming up. We're just, we're not even warming up our shots, really. But right. So, Ty, let's play on that a little bit more because there's two pieces to it, right? Which I think are valuable, and there's. So the idea of reducing injuries is super important, right? Because that should be a reason alone to warm up. But I think the one that play, yeah, right. That should be enough. Like the full stop, we're done, go warm up. But it doesn't seem to do the job. So I think the candy, right, or the fudge on top of this thing that we can share with listeners is the improved performance, right? Because I mean, I'm not an expert like you are in the body, right? But I know that I've seen reports about studies and stuff that show that you'll play better, right? You're going to move better. You're going to play better. Forget about the injuries. You're just going to have a better day of playing pickleball. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, 10,000% accurate. Like I said, there's a reason every other sport does this. There's a reason that you are spending time in the weight room and you're building muscle, you're getting stronger, you're working on different athletic movements to help you, not only again from the injury prevention standpoint, but all of us as players, right? We want to be able to get to the ball faster. We want to be able to cover ground quicker. We want to be able to hit the shots that we want to be able to hit. And so when we think about like shots, right, we spend so much time on drilling a shot, which is important. We need it. But if I'm not in position to hit the shot that I want to hit, it doesn't matter. So you have to be fast enough to get to where you want to go or be able to rotate and shift to where you want to go. But then when you get into, man, I want a more powerful shot, then you think about getting into the weight room to improve how much force you can produce and improve your ability to transfer force from the lower body through the core, through the upper body, through the paddle to be able to, that's what we all care about, right? We want to be able to win. And so if at the end of the day, if you're really looking to improve and you want to elevate your game, whether that's, beating your friends on the court, being the best person in the neighborhood, or whether that's winning your league, or whether that's going to win a tournament, or whether that's going to play at the highest possible level, like strength training and exercise and all that it's a non-negotiable. Like there's really no other way to get around this. That doesn't mean you got to go lift 1,000 pounds. That's not what that even means. But getting stronger in your body, being able to absorb and handle things easier, right? Being able to jump and change directions and all those things, like it's part of it. And if you do it appropriately, no matter what your age is, if you progress it and do it appropriately, you can do those things, right? I have 50, 60-year-olds that are jumping, right? They're jumping and landing on one leg. They're changing direction and moving the other way. Like it's all possible, but the caveat is it has to be done and progressed appropriately.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing, and this is, I always try and like throw like extra bonuses on here for folks, but like, you're going to live better. You're going to feel better. You're going to move better. You're going to get out of bed easier. I've been, I'm not in fantastic shape, but I have been going to the gym more frequently now, and I can see a difference. And like, even like, I'll tell you something simple. Like I'm moving some stuff around today. So I dropped something, right? It was like behind something. And usually like to get that thing is like, oh shit, I got to get down and get around. But I feel more like I'm stronger, but also easier for me to just like get into the position to grab the thing. And it was no problem. Why? Because I'm going to the gym. I also know that when I get on the pickleball court, I'm going to play better, so there's all these benefits to doing this kind of work. And I think it's 100% what you're saying. Now, one of the things, let's sell it to them though, Ty. Let's sell it to the listener because here's the thing. Let's go like to the top of the game, and then we'll come back to amateur play, right? Because I think there's a couple of pros that listen to this podcast, but most of our listeners are amateurs, right? Of course they do, especially when they know Ty's on there. Like, I got to hear what's going on with Ty. So I know that you've done some work and are doing some work with some pro players and things like that. Talk to us, like really just big picture. Like, they have a grueling season that they play pickleball in. So they need to get their bodies to recover, to deal with the stress of playing pickleball the way that they play pickleball. Just give us some general sense of like, what is it that a pro player, what are they thinking about? What are they doing? What are you recommending to them? Big picture stuff. And then we'll go from there and extend it to the amateur player.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head with it a little bit too, is with them, they don't have really a quote off season. We actually got really lucky here in this last month or so with a few of them. We actually got an off season where they weren't playing 4 tournaments in a month, right? And they actually got to take a little bit of a breather. And so that's the name of the game, is how do we don't want to be the best pickleball player we can be for January and February, right? That like, that's great. You were the best player ever for a month and a half, and then you just fell off. And so the secret is just how do we have the longevity? And so with that, how do we make sure, and that applies to amateur players too, right? That it goes so far beyond just, I'm trying to be the best I can be right now today. And it's like, that's great. How about 5 years? How about 10 years? Right. And so being able to recover and rest is probably some of the biggest things that we have to be aware of, because when you think about the pros, the grind of the season is just being able to, there's going to be some days, and I've told them, and they always fight with me, but I tell them like, look, we're not doing anything today, right? You just got back from a tournament. How are you feeling? Based on that answer determines what we're going to do, right? Because it's going to do us no good if you are mentally and physically shot. And I'm like, all right, let's go strength train for 2 straight days. And you're like you're slogging your way through the whole thing. And so that is really the delicate art and the dance that we have to do with the pro guys and girls, is being able to, how do we give them enough stimulus to help them with, make the gains and make the progresses that we want, make the progressions we want them to make, while also not overdoing it, right? We always have to figure out, how do I flirt with the line of getting us right there and then bringing it back down, right? Or maybe getting them right there and then bringing it back down. And so for some people, it's all right, we got 4 tournaments in a month. Maybe that means we're working out once a week, and that's all we're getting, because you're traveling, you're playing, you're competing. If you do great, you're making it to Sunday, right? Like the reality is maybe we're getting once a weekend, and then we're not doing anything except your pickleball stuff for the next day or 2, and then you go compete again. But, for other players, I only got 1 tournament this month. Great. That means we're going to be able to work out, 4, 6, 8 times this month. And then you go compete and do your thing, right? It's different for everybody. But when you're thinking about, I guess the driving point home here, because this applies to every level of player, you have to be strategic about how you organize and plan your month, your year, right? Your weeks, right? Making sure that, all right, these days I'm getting my strength training in, these days I'm getting my rest and recovery in, these days I'm getting my pickleball drilling in and playing. That's really how you have to do it at the pro level. And I think that can easily trickle down and work for every level of player.
Yeah, it sounds like, a couple of things that I want to play off there. One is, I'm going to make a statement, then I want to ask you a question, but like, you're obviously, the pros need to plan their playing for a whole year. And what you made it, the way you framed it was great, right? Like January and February, great. And then I don't have juice left. I don't have energy left. So I'm going to have a big lull, or maybe get injured or whatever, because I haven't prepared my body. For amateur players, we like to think about it for a session. So like you go out and you want to play, amateur players sometimes play, 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours, right? And so they'll come out and they'll play 2 amazing games, and then they just can't do anymore, right? They're like, they're the best dinker on the planet for a game, and then they can't do it anymore because their body, right, their body gives out. So
right.
I think the same analogy applies to or the same thinking applies to amateur players within sessions. But the other thing I wanted to play on was, and this is where I'm going to ask you a question, is the idea that, even pro players, right, need to be sensitive to, and you need to be sensitive as their coach, to what's going on in my life, right? And so like amateur players, might play 4 days a week, some play 7 days a week, but however often they're playing. Right. So there's only, they need to work within what they can do, right? But the key that I'm hearing from you is be intentional about it. and do something. In other words, like if it's one day a week that you go to the gym and work out, that's better than 0 days of the week for that week that you go to the gym and work out. And that's okay. Let's do that. Right. So does that sound correct to you with an amateur player? And how would you talk to an amateur player who plays like 5 days a week, 6 days a week, in terms of like figuring out how do I do this weight training or stretching or whatever around my normal play?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you really made a good point a couple of times when you were speaking there. Really what you have to fact find a little bit. Like one thing I always ask players, I'm like, what are your goals? Because that kind of sets up this whole conversation, right? Because that will determine kind of the plan of action and the level of focus we're really going to have with prepping and doing certain things. But I would say in general, right? Like I think you hit it spot on with being intentional, right? That is everything. So many times players are, I want to get better. That's great. But like, what's the game plan to actually help us get better? Right. And so, like you said, some players want to go 2, 3, 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever it is. Right. And I know even for me as a player, I'm good at 2 hours. If I go past my 2 hours, it's going to start tanking. And so when like players have to start thinking about, if you're really looking to improve, maybe 2 hours is where I'm going. Like when I drill, I know 90 minutes to 2 hours, that is my limit, or else this becomes counterproductive. And so being very intentional with that time frame that you do have, right? So not only is that going to help you with being more intentional, like less is more, right? Just because I'm putting in 20 hours a week doesn't mean we're getting any better here, right? Can we achieve the same results or actually get better in less time, right? And now you've taken, with less time, we have now put less wear and tear on the tires of our bodies. And now we've opened up time to go do other things, right? That can mean resting and recovering. That can mean going into the gym, right? And so for some people, it's, hey, I think you said it too, was just get in there once a week. We don't even have to worry about going in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a week. Nope, I don't even care. Get yourself in there once a week with purpose and intent of getting into the weight room and strength training and exercising. That in and of itself will help you. Right? It's not about diving headfirst and we're like, man, we're gonna drill 5 days a week. We're gonna hit the gym 5 days a week. It's like, that's not realistic. Like, let's not kid ourselves here. And so being intentional of, all right, I'm gonna get into the gym once a week for this month. And then next month, I'm gonna get into the gym twice a week. And I'm gonna drill 3 times a week at 2 hours a block. Like that's kind of the level of thinking we have to have if we're looking to improve, right? That there's really no other way to sugarcoat it other than you have to just be the word intentional. That is the most important word you have to have when you're thinking about these things and how do I want to improve.
The only thing I'd push back on there, Ty, a little bit is I would say, if you want to improve, you definitely, right? But I would just say, if you just want to like be able to get down like I did earlier and grab something off the floor without going, oh, and just feel better, it's a worthy investment. And I think and a part that's not, I think, I don't think gets the cred that it deserves. It's not like it's not talked about some, right? As you hear about it, but you get a tremendous mental benefit, from having your body in a better shape. It makes your mind feel better. And so it just all works together as one big happy system. So let me ask you.
There's really no
it's just, yeah. So, well, let me ask you this. So I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit here. I'm gonna ask you I was gonna ask you for one thing that a player could do to improve. Warm-ups, I think, is absolutely critical. You've already touched that one. So I'm gonna ask you for a second one, which is this. Let me frame it for you. So I'm gonna give you a range of let me describe like 3 different players to you. And let's see if there's one thing that we can do that you can say, start doing this today or tomorrow, and obviously, if you need to check with your doctor, all the caveats that need to go out there for doing anything physical. So if you're not sure, check with your doctor first, healthcare provider. But here's so we got one player is a player who plays pickleball, obviously, right? But doesn't do anything else. Okay. Mm-hmm. Second player is a player that they do a little bit of warm-up, they do a little bit of stretching, right? And they play pickleball, but they don't really do anything else. And then the third player is one that maybe once in a while might hit the gym or might do something like that, right? But doesn't really have like a set thing, right? They do a little bit more than the second one, right? But like none of these players are like super hardcore working out all the time. So is there one thing that they can do, whether it's balance, mobility, strength, and the only thing is it has to be like body weight, something they can do like if they wanted to do it, they could do it when they're done with this podcast, or they can do it when they get home or whatever, something that it's relatively simple, but that they would feel good about doing and they can just start doing pretty quick.
That's a good question.
I know, right?
That's a good question, and I feel like I could give a different answer for each group.
Go ahead. You want to give a different answer, that's fine. But I mean, to me, I would ask, like, if, like, I'm not trying to give you an answer, right? But like, for instance, like if body weight squatting is good enough, that's a fine answer to me, right? So I'm just like, I'm trying to think of something that's like, getting out. I tell friends of mine that I'm going a little off topic here, not off topic, but so I tell friends of mine sometimes that are out of shape. I'll tell them, like, lay down, and this is not news to you, I know, but the listener might be like, I tell them, lay down on the floor, stand up calmly, right? Lay down, stand up, do it 10 times, and you're going to be like out of breath. So to me, that's a full body exercise, but that's very specific, right? So I don't know if you have something that you'd recommend that kind of is simple like that.
Man, I mean, you can. This is the answer I have to give, but people hate it. It depends, right? It depends on who you are and where you're at in life. Because sometimes it can be as simple as get up and out of the chair, right? Yeah. Because you're working on that squat position, right? Or if you're thinking about, a split squat, start on one knee and then just stand up from there, right? And stand yourself straight up from that one knee, right? Sitting, like, just simple movements like that can be and they can be body weight movements, but
right,
positions that of just getting up and down, right? Or just learning how to hinge and just reaching your hips back and standing up tall, right? Learning how to load and reach your hips back and then sit up nice and tall. We could dive. It's hard for me to give a quick little answer because it goes so far into.
But listen, here's the thing, right? You're listening to this podcast and you're not really doing any weight training. How many reps would you think is a good target for someone just body weight wise, getting out of a chair? 5 or 10 or something like that, depending on what they get, right? But like do it until you feel like, holy crap, I can feel it in my legs, right? I can feel in my glutes and my legs and my.
A good kind of like rule of thumb that I apply to people all the time that I work with. I'm like a 7 out of 10 difficulty, right? That's kind of a good little range of, man, this feels like a 7 out of 10. I'm working here. Like, this isn't, if we're doing an exercise and you and I can sit here and have a nice, lovely conversation, like I can just sit here and I'm doing this with you and we're talking about life. I'm like, this ain't doing anything for us. So thinking about like a 7 out of 10 difficulty. So what does that mean, right? Does that mean that could be 5 reps of you standing up and down out of a chair, right? That could be you holding like a bag while you're sitting up and down out of a chair and doing that 6 times, right? It's a little bit different for everybody, but thinking about like a 7 out of 10 difficulty can be a good spot for somebody. But if you're very inactive, maybe start at a 5 out of 10 and then progress up to a 6 or a 7, whatever that looks like,
Yeah, but it's interesting, at the end of the day, how much you can do. Body weight, good idea. Like a bag of groceries, big watermelon, whatever. Just make it a little bit heavier.
Anything. Don't overthink it. Okay. Fill your pickleball bag with stuff.
There you go. Right. Yeah. There you go. I like that. Yeah. If you have 22 paddles in your bag, put them in your bag. Stand up, hold that bag, and see how it works. Seriously. All right, Ty. So now, if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, I like what I'm hearing from Ty. Sounds like a smart young man, knows what he's talking about. Is there a possibility of doing some stuff with you online, Zoom, things like that, to get some advice and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love to, even, whether that's interested in a training program that I can do for you, or even just general questions, I'm more than happy to be able to answer them. So if you just shoot me a message over on my Instagram, which is at Pickleball Sports Performance, or if you want to send me an email, twoody5446 at outlook.com. Those are both super easy ways to get a hold of me, and I'd love to be able to answer as many questions as I can.
Awesome. And we'll put those in the show notes as well. We had the opportunity, as I mentioned at the introduction, to work with Ty at our intensive in Arizona. It was a pleasure working with him. All the players had nothing but nice things to say about Ty and his friend Landon, who came out and helped us out at the camp. So, Ty, it was a pleasure to chat with you. Appreciate you sharing your tips on the body. And folks, warm up and start standing up out of chairs with watermelons. No. Thanks a lot, Ty. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me on.